Chapter 15, It's Now Time You Learned More. It was early Saturday morning, and the friends were gathered in their favorite local park reviewing the eventful week they had just gone through. Blaze is supposed to be coming back today, isn't he? Grace asked. Yes, that's what he said, Caleb confirmed. Don't know what time though. Caleb, do you know how he arrives? Does he travel in something? Does it land? Does he just pop into view where there was nothing before? I'm curious. It's so cool, Asher queried. Blaze spoke of the Fibonacci spiraling waves. So, obviously the spiral growth of many organic living things must play a part in the time travel. Actually, I do recall him saying something about the old growth trees acting like beacons, whatever that means. Caleb responded. A beacon is like a locator, so that might be what they use to focus on for a landing or taking off location, Grace said. Old growth trees? You mean like those ones up there? Asher said, gesturing further up the ravine to several large trees towering above the smaller trees and bushes. For sure. You know, Blaze dropped a few hints about how important those trees are. I would not be at all surprised if that's exactly where Blaze comes and goes, Caleb guessed. Let's go look, maybe we can find something, said Asher. Like evidence. Like a singed bush or something. Sounds good, Asher, Grace responded. I'd be a bit worried about being there when Blaze returns. We better wait and talk to him when he's back later, Caleb cautioned. Come on, Caleb. Where's your sense of adventure? It can't hurt to look, Asher declared. I don't think it's a good idea. Grace, what do you think? Caleb said. I'm afraid I'm with Asher on this one. Maybe there's something we can see to show us how that arrival from time travel happens, Grace speculated. With that, Grace headed toward the ravine, angling upstream to reach the spot near the trees. Asher was close behind. After standing hesitantly for a moment, Caleb shrugged his shoulders and jogged to catch up. Caleb shivered as they proceeded deeper into the ravine, the slimy foliage growing thicker around them. The trail grew darker as the light struggled to break through the canopy of trees above them. These bushes are so wet, Grace groaned as they pushed at the branches, which glistened from the morning rain. As their eyes adjusted to the low light, Asher noticed a bit of a path through the shrubs. This way looks good. This path should get us fairly close to those monster trees. Oh, gross. Asher suddenly squawked as his hand closed on a slug that was meandering over the leaf he was pushing away. Caleb laughed. So, Mr. Adventure Boy, looks like you've met your match. Grace laughed and Asher grinned bashfully as he wiped the slime from his hand onto some nearby leaves and the leg of his jeans. As they continued, the underbrush diminished. Soon they found themselves standing in a clearing under the first of the massive trees. Could this be the one? Grace asked, looking up into the branches. Can't even see the top. Or it could be one of those up there, Asher answered, looking farther up the ravine. What about that one down there? Caleb added, pointing downhill toward the creek. They all looked where Caleb was pointing. Wow, that one's huge, exclaimed Asher. It's bigger than all of these. Maybe we should start there. Look at the markings on the ground by this tree, Grace called out as she had made her way to the base of the first tree. Looks like burn marks. Good eye, Caleb replied. Asher stooped and poked at the dark ground. Nope, this is just dark clay, don't think it has anything to do with what we're looking for, Asher commented. Let's continue along and check out all of these trees on the upper hill to start. Then we can head down to check out that really big tree. These trees are easier to get to. We may find something, or at least it will help us figure out if there's something different about that other tree, Asher reasoned. Grace and Caleb nodded in agreement. Sounds like a plan, Ash, Grace responded. As they headed uphill to the big trees in the distance, they talked about what to look for, broken branches, footprints or anything singed. Asher had recently read a book on wilderness tracking and he was explaining some of it to the others as they approached the next tree. He suggested drawing a line in the dirt from the base of the tree to a point about 15 meters out. The strategy would then be to divide the ground around the tree into wedges. The whole area could then be explored, section by section. We have a lot of territory to cover. This is going to take us all day if we want to be thorough. There's the other tree up there and the big one down in the ravine. And we didn't properly look at all the area around that first tree. I think we should split up and each take a tree, Caleb offered. That does sound more effective. That's like what Blaze has taught us about breaking big tasks down into smaller, manageable ones. I'm really impressed how you've learned how to do that, Caleb. And now, to apply it to this problem we have here, you're really showing us that it's a life skill, not just a school skill. Impressive, Grace replied. Also, we would be less likely to trample any evidence. I vote we follow Caleb's suggestion, Asher noted thoughtfully. I'll take this tree, then go back to check out the first one. I'll take the one up the hill. Caleb, why don't you check out the big one in the ravine? Grace offered. Sounds great. We can meet back at the first tree, say in about an hour. That would be 10 a.m., Caleb said, looking at his watch. Asher and Grace both nodded while looking at their watches. In moments, Grace and Caleb were headed off to their trees and Asher had begun crawling along, marking a line toward the tree, head close to the ground, looking for clues. It was about a half hour later that Caleb was thinking that it was about time to wrap up at the huge tree and start heading up to the meeting spot. He had found a couple of things of interest. One spot seemed to have some partial running shoe prints. He couldn't be absolutely sure though, as the area by the tree had many large rocks embedded in the dirt. The most promising find was what looked like a piece of fabric hanging from a short stubby branch about 15 feet up the otherwise branchless base of the tree. I should get the others to look at that, he thought, looking up the hill to the area of the first tree. I wonder how they're doing? With that thought, he started through the foliage, angling toward the steep part of the hillside. He'd only taken 4 or 5 steps when he was overwhelmed by an incredible pressure in his ears. He instinctively clutched both sides of his head. The next sight was the ground coming up to meet him. There was a flash of intense light from behind him, then everything went black. Caleb, are you down there still? He heard the shouts wafting down the hillside. He shook his head to clear it and wondered what had happened. How long have I been out? Caleb muttered, looking at his wrist. Oh great, my watch is broken. The time wasn't showing and there was a splintering crack reaching across the screen. I'm over here. He managed to shout, the echo of the words within his head causing him to wince as his head began to throb. They found him sitting in the dirt, still dazed. I must have fallen and hit my head, and my watch, he said, looking around. But that's odd, there's nothing but soft ground. You don't think? Grace began, glancing back at the huge tree. I would say there's a definite possibility, Asher acknowledged. Look at those bushes. They're all bent, like they've been hit with a big wind, or something pushed them over. Wait, those weren't like that a few minutes ago, Caleb said, instinctively looking at his wrist. What time is it anyways? It's 10:30. You didn't meet us at 10 o'clock so we waited a bit, then started looking for you, Grace related. 10:30? I've been out for an hour. Caleb muttered. He looked over as Asher approached the flattened bushes. There are footprints here. Caleb, what do the soles of your shoes look like? They're runners, with a wave pattern on the bottom, Caleb noted, holding one foot up. Those look like hiking boot prints, Asher, Grace observed, crouching and studying the ground. None of us are wearing shoes that match those. I don't understand. There were no clear prints there before. I looked closely and thought I saw maybe a few partial running shoe prints, but I wasn't sure. And that bush was normal an hour ago. Caleb blurted out. Guess we found our tree, Asher exclaimed. I'd bet Blaze is at your place by now. Incredible, Grace exclaimed. There must have been something, pressure or wind, to flatten that bush. Now that I think about it, I was pretty sure that I had seen a flash of light a while back, but it was just for an instant. Asher had been studying the ground under some logs and said he hadn't noticed. At the time, I thought perhaps I had imagined it. Did you hear or see anything, Caleb? Well, actually, no. I was walking away from the tree, but there was incredible pressure in my ears. It was painful. I remember grabbing at them and losing my balance. There was what seemed to be a burst of intense light from behind me, then things went black, Caleb explained. There must be a huge energy transfer when someone arrives from another. Asher began. Time zone? Grace added. They all laughed. Exactly. I think Blaze arrived and that's what knocked you out. Probably what broke your watch face as well, Asher concluded. Let's go to my place and see if Blaze is back. Now we've got a few more things to ask him. Caleb concluded. They all set off marching up the slope. Sure enough, Blaze was waiting for them when they got to Caleb's house. Before they even had a chance to say anything about what they had experienced in the ravine, Blaze ushered them all onto the back patio. We need to talk, he had begun. It's now time you learned more about what's going on in the world and the specific roles you will play. You've been chosen by future trackers in the time of our 28-year-old selves, he went on, looking at them in turn. The information we share today will form memories that you will all have. Later this afternoon though, you will get an MA ghosting, so you won't recall the details of our discussion. The feelings and motivations brought about by that knowledge though, will remain, allowing you to advance the good in the world and make positive change. The future story of mankind will be extended. You will not always know why or how you know what you know. You will learn to trust your instincts and your gut feelings. The flashing pen I told you about in the Zoom call makes all this possible. Most of what I share today will be focused on decisions needed in the world related to climate change. The world depends on the spreading of factual information related to climate change and solutions such as clean energy development. For that reason, it will be important that you watch video A15 as soon as you can. This video will guide you in doing Survey FL5, which will preview what is coming in the U&I sections of Clever Quick. These sections cover understanding information and informing others. So, in a moment we'll get started. By the way, you can ask any question you like, and I will answer to the extent of my frontal memories. Be aware that there is vastly more information contained in my mind that has been subjected to MAs. I know that I've been put through this process many times myself, from those further in the future. So, what do you feel you need to know? What questions do you have? Overwhelmed, they were all momentarily tongue-tied. After a pause, Grace opened her mouth to speak. Before any words came out, they were all distracted by some sounds and words, originating from behind them. Meow, meow, I have a question, came a low rumbling voice. Ruh, where am I? In unison, they turned and were amazed by what they saw. There, poking out of Blaze's backpack were a nose and some whiskers. As they watched, the backpack rippled a little and out came the head and shoulders of an orange tabby cat with a shiny black collar. Purr, I recognize you people. Purr roar, you were on Caleb's computer. Zuki, what are you doing here? Blaze shouted. Are you okay? Meow, purr, I'm fine Caleb. Oh, I mean, Blaze, Zuki chirped, glancing at Caleb. Grr, now there's two of you. Confusing. The cat is talking. Asher shrieked. Meow, very observant human, Zuki purred. Roar, are the others as bright? Zuki arched his back, yawned and began licking his paw, surveying the room. Grace, Asher and Caleb all looked like they were trying to say something, but nothing was coming out of their open mouths. Next to them, Blaze smiled.